Hello everyone, welcome back to my second video on CSS layout. Last one we talked about Flexbox and we saw how easy creating layouts is with Flexbox. Now we are going to go ahead and learn even more about layout with CSS grids. Now here's the difference. CSS grids is a two-dimensional and Flexbox is one-dimensional. If you've seen my first video with Flexbox, you know that Flexbox only works with one axis, right? And that is the main axis. It could be horizontal, and if you change the flex direction to vertical, then it would be a vertical axis. So Flexbox position its items in accordance with the main axis. Okay, so that's why it's a one dimension, and CSS grid actually works two dimension, and so it's really a grid system like you see right here. Now, okay, so let's go back to the article that it is also in CSS tricks. If you search grid, you will see a complete guide to grid, and I definitely recommend you to go to that this article right here and read upon all these things that you can do. Grid system or grid box layout is a little bit difficult than Flexbox. It's very powerful, but to get your head around it might be a little difficult. So just practice with it, see what each item does, see what but it's really similar to Flexbox, so it shouldn't be too difficult. You can. Okay, so the first thing what we're going to do is I'm going to go to Can I Use and see if the CSS grid actually supported in all the modern browsers. Here you can see that 10 and 11 Internet Explorer has partial support. Then Edge 12 to 15 has partial support as well. But 16 and up, Edge has total support. So most of the modern browser right now has full support for grids, CSS grid layout. Only for Opera Mini for some reason is just not on board with the grid system for some reason. But if you don't care about Opera Mini, then you definitely should think about using grid layout in your next project. Okay, so let's get going. So I have my Visual Studio Code up, and this is the primary div that I have. Now, just like Flexbox, you also have to call display grid on the parent or a container. So I do have, let me see if I can make it bigger so you can see. So I do have a parent div right here. I give it a class of grid container, and within this div, I have 8 divs right here, and each div has this emoji. I have like rabbit, lion, mouse. And then each div has a class, grid item 1, grid item 2, grid item 3, and a generic class of grid item, so I can just style it for visual effect. All right, so this is what I have right now. So let's go ahead and go to style, and then first grab a grid container, because that's the parent div where I have to call display flex to. So grid container, first I'm going to give it a background, and I'm going to give it a background light gray so you can actually see what's going on. So there is our container, and let's grab grid item, and here just give it a border of 1 pixel solid black. Okay, so here's our div, and let's make this emojis bigger. So let's do font size. I would do 150 pixels so you can see. All right, so it's big enough. So you can see that each emoji is in a div, and by default div has a display of block, so that's why it's taking the full width of the website and in its own line. All right, so let's go ahead and call display grid on the grid container, see what happened. All right, save it, nothing changed. Now this is different than Flexbox, because the moment you declare display Flexbox in the parent container, you saw that there was a subtle difference on the layout, because it takes the inline block or put every divs in the inline, and that's because Flexbox works on 1 dimension. Grid system, though, because it works in 2 dimensions, I have to specify how many columns I need, how many rows I need. Okay, so that's why you don't see any difference right away. So the first thing what I'm going to do, I'm going to specify a column. Okay, so right now if you think about this container right now, if you think about this whole container as being one column, and then each div is kind of a row. So I got 1, 2, 3, and then I have 8 emojis, so 8 div right here. But I have only one column right now, taking the full width of the website, and there's 8 row, each row for one. And in grid template columns, what I'm going to do is I am going to specify how many columns I want. I'm going to specify that with the size. Let's say I want each column to be 200 pixel, because I know that each item, each emoji is 150 pixels. So at least I need 200 pixel width column. So if I say 200 pixel right here, I only specify it one time. It basically means that this should be one column. Okay. Now, if I save this, see, it is now, the div itself is now 200 pixel width, okay, and it is right up against the most left corner here. So that means that I specified 200 pixel. That means it knows that, okay, it should be one column. Now, if I want 2 column with the same 200 pixel, I can do space and then do 200 pixel again and save, and now you can see that this is now 2 columns. Okay, each column is 200 pixel, and you can also see that it is automatically jumping. Okay, your emojis are jumping to accommodate the size, and that's the beauty of grid, because a lot of things it does automatically for you. So if you even want 3rd column, you can just do space another 200 pixel, and you will have a 3rd column. So you have 3 column grid right here, and you have 3 rows. All right, you can also make each column like a different size. Let's say the column number 3rd, let's do it for 300 pixel. Now it is 300 pixel, and the first and the second column is 200 pixel. So let me go back to 200 here, and then you can see that I am specifying 200 pixel, 200 pixel, 200 pixel. Depending on, like, if you want a 12 column layout, if you want 6 column layout, you have to write that size 6 times or 12 times. Now there is a shortcut available in Grid System. You can actually use, instead of writing 200 pixel 3 times, I can do repeat and open parentheses, and in that parentheses I have to specify how many columns I want. In this case I want 3 columns, so I'll put 3 and then comma, and then I will put the size. So let's say 200 pixel. Save. You don't see any difference because it's actually doing the same thing. I can change this to 2, and you see that it now changed back to 2 columns. Each one is 200 pixel. Now for the size, Grid System will take pixel, it will take EM, REM, all the measure unit that is available in CSS. There's extra one measure unit that's available for grid, and that is very powerful, and that is called FR. So what FR is, you see that immediately it changed. So by 200 pixel, if I specifically declaring a 200 pixel, it is literally taking 200 pixel for width. All right, but one FR is dynamic. So if I save this, this is one fraction. What it's going to do is it's going to make the first column and the second column. It's going to make 2 columns, and each column is going to be the same exact size, 1 FR, but it's going to take the whole space available for the whole website. So width. So if I do, let's say 3 columns, you see that there is no empty space right here, because what it's doing is 1 FR is calculating under the hood is that the total width of the screen size, and then is dividing by how many columns it needs. So each column is actually getting, it's growing with the container size, and it's also stretching with the container size as well, as you can see. I mean, like shrinking with the container size when it's smaller. So it is already somewhat responsive. So Grid System is really good for making a responsive website. Okay, so with that one, let's go ahead and do, you can also specify, let's say, grid template rows. Grid template rows, you can also do, it has to do with the height. So column is how many, like the width, how much you want your width size. For rows, you want to specify what is the height. Okay, so let's say I want to say the first column right here should be 200 pixel height long. So nothing changed because it is 200 pixel. And then I want to do the space second, and that is referring to the second row here, and I want this one to be 400 pixel. If I save this, now you can see the 400 pixel is height wise, it is bigger, it's longer than the first and the third row. I can also do 300 pixel for the third one, and you can see that now the third row is also 300 pixel, second row is 400 pixel long, and then the first one is 200 pixel long. So with grid template rows, you can size the rows in terms of the length, the height actually, and then grid template columns, it is going to be, you can customize the size in terms of its width. There is also another property value that is going to be grid auto rows. Now if you do grid auto rows and then just put it to that's what I want to do, and put it onto auto, it is actually automatically going to calculate each row for you, and that's pretty much the default. But you do have the option if you want to do it will come handy once you have some content in your div. So in that case, you can use auto. You also can use min max. So min max, what basically is, so when you say min max and open parentheses, the first argument it wants is that the size, the minimum size, let's say I want minimum size of 200 pixel, the row length should be 200 pixel minimum, and then the maximum I want 400 pixel. So in this case, you can see that each row right now, it is taking the 400 pixel max. And then if the container get shrunk from, it will take minimum of 200 pixel. Okay, so that's what min max does. We're going to talk about min max in a bit more elaborately. So let's go ahead and delete this. And let's learn about gap. So I can do here, so I can do grid, let's see, I believe it's going to be column gap. Okay, so grid column gap 10 pixel. You can see that for each column, between each column there is a gap, and I'm specifying at 10 pixel. I can do the same thing with grid row column as well, grid row gap as well, and then I can just do, let's say, 20 pixel. Okay, so I have more gap in between rows than the column. I can also make it 10 and equal. Now there is a shortcut. If I want equal amount of space between column and row, I can simply just do grid gap, and I can just say 10 pixel here. Save, and you can see that 10 pixel, it's applied to row and column. Let's individually size these divs. Okay, I can do that too here. So let's first grab the first grid, and that is the div grid item 1. I have a class, so let's go ahead and grab this rabbit right here. So I'm gonna say grid item 1. Okay, with the grid item 1, I can do here is it's called grid column. I can do grid column start. So it basically means I want this rabbit to take not only the first grid, but I also want it to take the second grid. Okay, I want rabbit to take this both grid at the same time. So I can specify that. I will go and grab the first grid by its class, grid item 1, and then put grid column start. And then I will specify column is going to be 1. So when I say grid column start, it basically means the first very line right here, and this is the first column, and this is going to be the second column. Okay, and this is going to be the third column right here. Now these two columns are actually the same. It's because we are putting a gap, that's why you're showing two lines, but basically it is like if I don't have the gap, it is actually one line. So this is a grid. This is the basic that is going to go off. So the first line is the first column start, then second, and then third. So I will say grid column end, and end, I want to cover also the second grid here. So you might be thinking that, okay, I'll put 2, but here, as I mentioned, the column actually starts from the line. So this is 1, this is 2. So if you put 2, nothing changes. You actually have to put 3 because this is what you want. So you're gonna put 3, save, and now you can see that it exactly stretched and took two grid boxes. Okay, if you want the rabbit to take the whole 3 columns on the first row, you can actually do 4, save it, and then you can see that rabbit is actually taking the full row and all 3 columns in the first row. Grid column end, you can actually count the line and then say 4. You can also do -1. It is automatically going to assume that you want the last line. So you want basically the stretched as possible for the column. You can use that too. Now I'll go back to 4 here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab grid item 2. So let's talk about the lion, and I can do the same thing with row, and let me show you. So grid row start, and it's going to start. So grid row, I want it to start from here. So this line is not 1 but actually 2, because 1 would be this line. So I have 2, so I will say grid row start 2, and then I want it to end. So 2, 3, 4. I want it to end at 4. So I'm going to go ahead, I'll write grid row end, and I'll say 4. If I save this, you see now lion's grid now starting from the second row and then end up at the 4th or the 3rd row. Okay, so that's how you individually position your items. Now there is a shortcut. You can actually do, instead of writing this both line of code, you can actually do grid column. So you can actually do grid column and just say your starting point, which is going to be 1, and then space slash, and then your last point, which was, I believe, 3. So if you save this, you see it's exactly the same effect. Or you can just actually do 4. I think it was 4. Exactly the same effect. You can do that, this one with the same thing. You can just say grid row, and you will start with 2, space slash space, and you have 4, and save it, and you see that it has the same effect. You also, there's another shortcut. You can do 1/4. You can also just say span, and how many grid boxes you want to span. I want 2. So you look at that, 2. If you want the 3, just put 3. It's a little bit easier than before. With the grid row, you can also say I want it to span 3 rows. So it's in 3 or like just 2 rows. There you go. It is going to span to 2 rows for the grid. Okay, so that's how you individually size and resize your grid. Okay, now let's talk about justify content and align content. Just like Flexbox, you also have justify content, align items, justify items available in your grid box as well. So let me go ahead and get rid of all this here. And just go back to my gap. Here, if I put, instead of 1 FR, let's just do 200 pixel. And let's make this one 2 columns. Okay, so right now, justify content is, I'm gonna call justify content here. And if I do center, it's actually going to center it horizontally, just as we learned in our Flexbox last video. I can also do start. So just know that it's not flex start. Flex start only works with Flexbox. It's just going to be start for grid, and it's going to be to the left, and then you can also do end save, and it's going to be at the end. So I can do center. Okay. Now, align content does the same thing, but in terms of vertical. So if I do center here, you don't see any difference because I don't have a height here. So let me go ahead and specify a height, and I'll just say 1 view height here. And now you can see that with the align item center, the whole grid system is dead center. I can also do start, save, and it's going to start from the top. And if you do end, it's going to start from the bottom. Okay, let's keep it center. And I can also use align self. And now in order to work with align self, I have to give the grid template rows, and I'm just going to say min max. Minimum should be 400 pixel and the max should be auto. So if I save this, you can see right now is that it is going outside because 400 pixel the width. So here, if I could just do grid item, and if I do align self, and if I do end, you can see now the item is at the bottom. If I do start, save, it's going to be at the start. And if I do center, that's basically going to be in center. So that's how you individually target each grid and then take it out of the flow of the grid flow and then position it as you need. Okay, so that's pretty much it for one way of specifying your grid layout. There's another way that I want to show you. So to do that, what I'm going to do, I'm going to delete all this. I'm going to go ahead and delete this, delete all this actually. All right, so I am going to show you another way you can add grid layout to your project. Now this is going to be grid template area. So I'm going to say grid template let's see, areas. Okay, grid template areas. What grid template areas actually does is I am explicitly going to write the grid here with the keywords. Now here, if I do, let's say rabbit, so I'm going to open up a quotation mark, and within this quotation mark, I'm going to first decide the first row. Okay, so I'm going to say I want the rabbit to take all the 3 columns. I'm going to have 3 columns, and I want rabbit to take all the 3 columns in the first row. So quotation mark, and in that quotation mark, I'm just going to say rabbit, space, again rabbit, space, again rabbit. So instead of the size, now I'm creating with the keyword the grid myself. So quotation mark, and then this 3 basically means that this is the first row, just one row right now, first row, and each word, each rabbit represent each column. So there should be, as of right now, there should be 3 columns, and I want rabbit to take all these 3 columns. That's why I put rabbit 3 times. Okay, the next one is going to correspond to the second row. So second row, I have a lion here, so I'm just going to use lion keyword. I can use whatever keyword I want, but it's better to use the keyword that you can directly attach, because I'm going to attach rabbit with the rabbit grid item 1, lion with the grid item 2, lion. Okay, so this is the lion first. Now I want for lion the same thing. I want it to be on the second row and take up the whole space, all 3 columns. So I'm going to say lion again, and space lion again. And then notice that I'm not putting any comma or nothing. It's just each one will be in quotation. Each row will be in quotation. There's no need to put any comma. So here I will put the next one is mouse, and I want mouse to be in the third row right now. First row, second row, third row, but only appear in the first column. So I'll put mouse in the first column, space on the second and third column. I'm gonna put cat. So I'm gonna put cat. That is this grid item right here. I'm gonna put cat, and then after this, after cat, I will have tiger. Now tiger, I will put first 2 columns, and then the last one would be for bear. And at the end, I'll have wolf take one column, and then dog will take 2 columns. Okay, so if you see, like, visually it looks like a grid. So I have 3 by 1 2 3 4 5 3 by 5 grid here. So I have 3 columns, okay, and I have 5 rows. Okay, I explicitly declaring this grid, and I want to attach, okay, with each grid item. The first one, the grid item, I'm going to go ahead and make all copy paste all here. So it's going to be 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and this one would be 3, this one would be 4, 5, 6, 7, and lastly 8. So the grid item 1, this is how I'm going to attach the keyword to the grid item rabbit, is I'm going to say grid area. So I want this grid area to take from this area template. So I'm going to say rabbit. That's all, no quotation, nothing, just say the name. Make sure you spelling exactly correctly here. And here I am going to do the same thing. I'm just going to copy, and instead of rabbit, I'm just going to say lion. Here, instead of lion, I'm going to say mouse. And here, I think after mouse, I got cat. And after cat, I got tiger. And I got bear. And I got wolf. And lastly, I got dog. Okay, there you go. If I save this, look at this. Look at this. Right now, the rabbit is taking all 3 columns, just as I explicitly declared. Lion is also taking all 3 columns. Mouse is taking the first column. Okay, and it is responsive. It is getting bigger and also shrinking. All right, and mouse is taking the 1, cat is taking 2 columns, tiger is taking 2 columns, bear is taking 1, and wolf is taking 1 column, and dog is taking 2 columns. So that's how the template area works. Now, okay, so let's go ahead and apply all this we learned in our grid box system and also flexbox system, and see if we can just create a basic layout for our website. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and delete all this div here, save. I'm also going to delete the style from here as well, save. And then I'm going to create something. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to first create a section. And I'm going to give this a section a class. I'm going to say it's going to be the grid container. And then in this grid container, everything will be in there. So I'm going to call the display grid in this grid container. So the first one I want to do is I'm going to have a header. Okay, I'm going to have a header, and then I will have an aside. Okay, remember, it's just going to be a layout. I'm just creating a layout. So header, and then I'm going to have a side. I'm going to have a main, and then I am going to have a footer. Okay, so save this. You don't see nothing because it doesn't have any width or height or the background color. That's why you don't really see anything. So let's go to style, and here what I'm going to do is I'm going to first target grid container. Target grid container, and I'm going to give this a width of 100 view width. Sorry, 100 view width, and then I'm going to give it a height of 100 view height, and then I'm going to call display grid. Okay, I'm going to call it display grid. And before I do that, let me go ahead and just give each one a background of, let's say, I'm gonna give a background to the header blue. All right, so let's go ahead first. What we're gonna do, in order to create a layout, we are going to first declare explicitly with keyword a grid template area. So let's go and do this. Grid, then template areas, and here, none. Here, I'm just gonna give myself some space, double quotation. I will have header, and it's gonna be a 3-column layout. So the first column, all 3 columns will be header, and then after that I will have a side. I need a quotation mark. So aside, now aside will only be available for 1 column here. Okay, so after aside I want the main, and main will take the rest of the 2 columns. Here I also want aside, aside here as well. And here is going to be main again, so it's going to be 4 row, and at the end I'm going to have footer, 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 and footer is just going to be just like header is going to be at the bottom. Okay, so right now this is the template areas right now. Okay, if I save it, you see that it's jumbled up because I called display grid and then I specify template areas, but I haven't really attached the keyword to each header, aside, and main. So don't worry about that. So just look at the grid right now. Is header is going to take 3 columns, then aside is going to take 1 column, but it's 2 rows, and then main, and then footer, footer. So let's go ahead and attach the keyword. Then it's going to be grid area, and obviously it's going to be header. If I save this, look at this, we already have a layout on hand. Okay, it's we just simply made a layout. I can put my content here in the header, my menu, and in the header, and then aside, and then the main content. Okay, now exactly I can you can see that footer is a very large. It's basically the same size as a header, and also side is too small. I can now adjust it. So first I declare this is going to be my area. Okay, now I can individually resize this. Okay, so let's go ahead and do a grid column template. Okay, so let me do a grid template column, and here what I'm going to do is I'm going to say min max, and I'm going to say minimum I want it to be 150 pixel. Okay, and max I want this one to be 250 pixel, and that's going to be for the first column. Okay, for the first column is going to be just a side. Okay, and after this I am going to space, and I'm just gonna have 2 FR and then 1 FR. All right, so what basically I'm doing here is that I'm calling grid template columns, and I am giving for the first column I am giving like a min and max. Okay, so I want the first column, which basically aside is going to be, so header is going to be on the first column, side going to be, and then footer, but header also going to be on the second and third. Aside is the only one that's going to stay in the first column for 2 rows. So for that, I just want that I don't want it to shrink beyond 150 pixel. Okay, and I also don't want it to grow. Like right now, if I move it, look at that, aside is growing with the whole website, and it's getting bigger and bigger. I don't want that because my maybe links and certain sort of things are going to be here, and I want to make sure that it stays on a certain position or a size. So I will say min is going to be 150 pixel and max is going to be 200 pixel. Oh, there is too many parentheses. There you go. Okay, so min max. Now you can see that even if I make it, the website gets bigger, the first column stays to its 200 pixel. It doesn't move. Okay, so all right, that's good. And also I want this second column to be 2 FR and then third column to be 1 FR. Okay, that's good. And let's go ahead and work on the grid template rows, because in grid template rows Now for the header, I have 1, 2, 3, 4 rows. For the first row, for the header, it's too big. I want this one to be 100 pixel. Okay, if I save this right now, look, it got shrink. And then second one, let's work on this two, and this two I'm going to actually put 2 FR for the second, 1 FR, 2 FR for the third one as well. And the fourth row right here, so as of right now it looks like this, so I have more space. Okay, the fourth one is going to be, I'm going to be 100 pixel as well. So in fact, I'm gonna make it a little less, so I'm gonna do like an 80 pixel for the footer, because the footer will just have like a copyright information or something like that. But I can individually now, so once I declare my template area, and then I can actually go and then target each column and each row and make it a certain size if I want. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and put something. Let's go ahead and put some content in header. So in the header, and I have some HTML that I already worked on. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this and paste it right here. So all I have here is in header, I have an H1, so I have a brand, and I have a list. And in the list, I only have like a home, about, and contact. Let's go ahead and give some unordered list to aside as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and inside aside, I'm gonna press right here. So I have like help, resource, and contact, random stuff that I came up with. Let me see if I have anything else in, and I have a little writing in the footer just to show you what it's all about. Okay, so I have some list in the aside. I have some list in the header. So the header is basically, it works as this is going to be a brand and this is going to be a menu of some sort. So let's go ahead and work on this then. All right, let me go ahead and take a look at my style here. So I'm going to go ahead and do header is display flex. So I'm going to use also flexbox. Now flexbox and grid together actually is very powerful, and you know, you can work with flexbox and grid. It works together very well. So let's go ahead and do a display of flex. Display of flex. And you see that the brand and the list right now is now side by side because of the display flex. I'm going to do another thing. I'm going to go ahead and UL, just universally target the unordered list, and just say list style, I want none. Okay, so the bullet points are gone now. All right, so display flex, I also want to do a justify content, and I'm going to go ahead and do space around. So that's good. I also want to do is I'm going to go ahead and header, and under the header UL, I want it to do flex. Sorry, I want to do display flex. So basically what I'm doing here, I'm targeting this UL. Okay, this UL. Now this UL is the parent container for all these three lists. Right now it is on a block level. I want this one to be side by side, so that's why I am targeting. So UL, this UL is under header, so I'm going to go ahead and okay, this is better, under header. So I'm first targeting header, then from header I'm saying that under header, the UL that you see, apply flex display to it. So if I do this, if I save this, you can see right now it is automatically side by side. And I can do here one more thing, because it's all squished. If I do, because it doesn't have enough height width, so if I do 400 pixel width right here, and if I do justify content space evenly, you see that these are right now, there's some space. Now these are not aligned, so I'm going to go back to here. I'm going to say align items. I'm going to say center. Now I have a brand and I have a menu items. Okay, and look at that, it is it is responsive, but I don't like that it actually grows to a fact that it is, you know what, instead of using space around, I'm actually going to use space between. That's what I did mistake. So with that space between, I do have some space here, but I don't have any space to the left to the brand, and I can easily solve this. Just target header h1 and just apply a margin left of 20 pixel to it, and look at that, there's some space right now. So it's good. Now it is all responsive. Okay, so that's my header, and let's take a look at a side. And for a side, I'm going to go ahead and I want this 3 to be at the at center. Flex, and I do justify content center, and then line items center. It works a little better. So next thing, what we're gonna do, I want something in here in this green area, like a project or another grid. That would be awesome if I have a grid within a grid. So let's go ahead and add the same emoji div that we had before and add it to our main div right here. All right, there you go. So look at that, our emojis are back. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to right now inside the main, I have this div and this as a project container. All right, let's go ahead and grab that. So I'm gonna say project container, project container, and let's call this let's give it a display of grid right away. Let's give it a display of grid, and also I want, because I have a class here, grid item, project grid item 1, in fact grid item, let's just go ahead and grab this class because I want to make it bigger. It's too small right now, and here I'm gonna just say font size 150 pixels. Save it. Okay, now it's good. What about, let's just do 100 pixel. Okay, that's good. And here with the display grid, I can also do grid template column. Grid template column. Now I can do it, let's say repeat 3 1 fr. All right, so I gave it grid template columns repeat 3 1 fr, and look at that. Now let's go ahead and give it a border right now, just to see what's going on with this. Solid black, save it. Okay, so now I can see what's happening here with the border. All right, so it is stretching, growing and shrinking. Okay, so right now I can do like grid template columns with the project container, and then just have like repeat 3 columns, each one should be 200 pixel. Okay, so as you can see, it's not as very responsive as I like it to be. So what I can do here is I can do repeat. Instead of specifying 3 columns, I'm gonna put something like AutoFit. So I want the browser to calculate how many space of columns it needs. So I'll say AutoFit, and here instead of saying 200 pixel, I'm just gonna say min max, and I will say 150 pixel is the minimum I want, and maximum just do auto. So if I save this, now you can see that it is getting stretched. So if it's growing with the box itself, and then it's not going to get, and then if it's smaller, it is actually adjusting itself with it. So that's the beauty of it. And then also I can do something, for an example like this. So I can actually do place items, which is justify items and align items all together, a combination of it. So if I do this, then all things are going to be centered, and I can actually put another div right here with a tiger emoji, save, and you see that it's automatically, you don't have to do nothing. So it automatically getting adjusted, and thus you know, making it super responsive. Now, the last thing I want to do here is that when I go to for an example, like a mobile view, I want everything to be instead of like this, I want everything to be in one column. So how I do this? So let me go back to style, and here what I'm going to do is the first container that I made everything a grid container, that one I'm just going to add a media query. The media query is when you add something, you want to make it responsive for certain size. So I'm going to say media, and you can just put screen, and or I just put like parentheses, media parentheses, and I'm going to do main width. So I'm just gonna say main width would be 750 pixels. So whenever it is over 750 pixel, I want you to behave like this. So I'm going to go ahead, and here I'm gonna put the curly braces, and you can see the moment it gets more than 750 pixel, it behaves like this, like we designed. But if it gets less than 750 pixel, and it gets now stacked, and that's what I want. All right, and then my project section here is already responsive with the AutoFit min max property values. Okay, so this is a quick preview, whatever you call it, of Gridbox. It is very powerful. I definitely recommend you to check out that article, Complete Guide to Grid CSS, and practice on your own. Just make a grid layout like this. Anytime you want to make a website, front-end website, or for a client, or maybe for your project, you want to first consider making the layout first, and then you can always add the content later. So that's what you can do. Let me know if you like this video. Let me know in the comment below. Guys, I'm gonna, next video I will again make another CSS, but this time it's going to be actually frameworks. So we'll talk about Bootstrap and Materialize frameworks in the next video. So till then, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.